I never liked winter. Even before everything happened, winter always made me uneasy. The way sound disappears under snow. The way darkness comes early and stays longer than it should. But after that year, winter stopped being just a season. It became a warning. This happened when I was 26 years old. At the time, I was working short contracts wherever I could find them. Construction in the summer, warehouse work in the fall. When winter came, jobs dried up fast. That's when I saw an opening for a temporary position with a wildlife monitoring program in northern Montana. The pay was good. The job sounded simple. Monitor animal movement. Check trail cameras. Log weather data. Stay in small observation cabins placed deep in the forest. They told me most assignments were done in pairs. By the time I arrived, winter had already locked the area down. Roads were narrow and barely plowed. Snowbanks were taller than a truck in some places. The forest felt endless, row after row of dark pine trees swallowing the sky. On my first day, my supervisor handed me a folded map and tapped one spot with his finger. Cabin 17, he said. Something in his voice made me pause. That one's isolated, he added quickly. But you'll only be there a few nights. Radio check-ins every 4 hours. Then we rotate you out. I remember asking, half joking, why not send 2 people? He didn't answer right away. Short staff, he finally said. I should have asked more questions. I didn't. The drive to cabin 17 took most of the day. Once I left the main road, the world seemed to shrink. No radio stations. No cell service. Just the sound of tires crunching through snow and the hum of the engine. The deeper I drove, the quieter everything became. No birds. No wind. Just silence pressing in from all sides. When I finally reached the clearing, the cabin looked wrong. Not broken. Not abandoned. Just forgotten. Like something people had stopped thinking about on purpose. It was a small wooden structure, darkened by age. One window. One door. A chimney capped with ice. Snow piled against the walls like it had been there for years. I shut off the engine, and the silence hit hard. Not peaceful silence. Heavy silence. The kind that makes your ears ring. Inside, the cabin smelled like cold wood and metal. Everything was neatly arranged, almost too neat. Logs stacked by the stove. A notebook open on the desk, as if someone had stepped away and never come back. I turned on the radio. Static. After a few adjustments, a voice finally came through, weak but clear. Cabin 17, do you copy? I answered immediately. Hearing another human voice felt like relief. They confirmed my arrival, told me weather conditions were stable, and reminded me again, 3 nights only. That first night went by slowly. I checked equipment, logged temperatures, and ate canned food by lantern light. The sun disappeared early, pulling darkness behind it like a curtain. As the temperature dropped, the cabin started making noises. Soft creaks, a faint pop from the stove, a low tapping sound somewhere in the walls. I told myself it was normal. Old cabin settle, with contracts in the cold. Still, I locked the door before going to sleep. I woke up suddenly, heart racing, unsure why. The cabin was completely dark. I checked my watch. 1:37 a.m. That's when I heard it. Footsteps. Outside. Slow. Heavy. Crunching through snow. Not running. Not wandering. Walking. Each step sounded deliberate, like whoever was out there knew exactly where they were going. The footsteps moved closer and closer, until they stopped right outside the wall behind my head. I sat up slowly, barely breathing. I waited for a knock. A voice. Anything. Nothing came. Then another step. Closer this time. Right beneath the window. My hand found the flashlight, but I didn't turn it on. I was afraid the light would give me away. I told myself it had to be an animal. But animals don't walk like that. The footsteps moved again, slow and steady, circling the cabin. One full loop. Then another, like whoever it was checking for weaknesses. After a long minute, the sound faded into the trees. I didn't sleep after that. Morning came without warmth. Gray light filtered through the window, making everything look lifeless. I stepped outside and immediately saw the tracks. One set of footprints. Human, bare, toes and heels pressed deep into frozen snow. They led from the tree line straight to the cabin wall. And they didn't lead back. I radioed the station. Did anyone stop by last night? I asked. No scheduled visits, the dispatcher said. Everything okay? I lied and said yes. The second night was worse. I locked the door early, wedged a chair under the handle, kept the lantern burning low. Just after midnight, I heard scratching, slow, careful, like fingernails dragging across wood, then breathing, right outside the wall. Not panicked, not desperate, calm, patient. I stared at the window, refusing to look directly at it. That's when the voice spoke. Please, it's cold. My entire body went rigid. No one could survive barefoot in that temperature. I know you're in there, the voice whispered. I didn't answer. The voice stayed for nearly an hour, sometimes crying, sometimes whispering, sometimes just breathing. When it finally stopped, the silence felt louder than before. At dawn, I stepped outside one last time. Footprints covered the snow, dozens of them, circling the cabin over and over, like someone had been pacing all night. I left immediately. Weeks later, I asked the station manager about Cabin 17. He went quiet. Then he told me about the researcher who had died there years earlier, locked out during a storm, barefoot, frozen. They never found his body, he said, just the footprints. I quit the next day, but winter still follows me. Sometimes, late at night, I wake up to the sound of breathing, and I swear it's right beside my bed. I used to think loneliness was something you got used to, that if you spent enough time alone, it stopped bothering you. Long-haul trucking taught me that. Days without seeing the same face twice. Nights spent parked under flickering lights at empty rest stops. Conversations reduced to radio chatter, and receipts slid across counters. But winter driving teaches you something else. It teaches you that loneliness isn't just being alone. Sometimes it's realizing you were never alone to begin with. This happened when I was 34 years old. I'd been driving trucks for almost 10 years by then. I knew the roads. I knew the risks. I knew when to push forward and when to pull over. At least, I thought I did. Route 6 was one of those roads everyone talked about. It cut through a mountain range where cell service disappeared completely. Weather changed without warning. Snowstorms came fast and stayed longer than expected. The pay was higher because most drivers avoided it during winter. Some said the road felt wrong at night, like something watched you from just beyond your headlights. I laughed it off. I needed the money. The night it happened was deep into January. Snow had been falling since early afternoon, thick, steady, and quiet. By sunset, the sky turned the same color as the ground, white blending into gray. No clear edges anymore. My headlights barely reached 30 feet ahead. The radio crackled constantly with weather alerts. Winter storm warning, reduced visibility, road closures possible. I checked the clock. 30 minutes to my stop. I told myself I'd made it through worse. The road climbed higher into the mountains. Trees closing on both sides, heavy with snow, bending toward the asphalt like they were leaning in to listen. That's when I saw her. At first, I thought it was just snow playing tricks on my eyes. A shape formed by drifting flakes and shadow. But the shape didn't move. I slowed instinctively. She stood on the shoulder of the road, not waving, not signaling, just standing there. I hit the brakes hard. The truck skidded slightly before stopping, tires fighting for grip. Snow whipped across the windshield as I leaned forward. She wore a thin coat, too thin, the kind you'd wear in fall, not in a mountain blizzard. Her hair hung stiff around her face, frozen in clumps. Her skin looked pale, almost gray, against the snow. I rolled the window down an inch. "Ma'am," I shouted, "are you okay?" She turned her head slowly. Her eyes were wide. "Empty. I missed the bus," she said. Her voice was calm. Too calm. I didn't think. I opened the door and waved her inside. The cold rushed in immediately, biting my hands and face like it was alive. She climbed up without hesitation. As soon as she sat down, the cab felt colder. Not the heater failing kind of cold. A different kind. I wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and turned the heat all the way up. She didn't react. Didn't shiver. Didn't thank me. She just stared forward. We drove in silence for a few minutes. Snow slammed against the windshield, so hard it sounded like gravel. "Where you headed?" I finally asked. "Home," she said. Nothing more. I tried again. "You got family nearby?" She didn't answer. Her hands were folded neatly in her lap. Her posture was perfect, like she was posing for a picture. That's when I noticed something that made my stomach tighten. Her breath wasn't fogging the window. Mine was. The glass on my side was coated in mist. Her side stayed perfectly clear. I stared a little too long, then forced myself to look back at the road. It's just the airflow, I told myself. Then the radio turned on by itself. Static burst through the speakers, louder than before. All drivers. A dispatcher's voice said, "Distorted but clear enough. Route 6 is now closed. Multiple fatalities reported due to exposure. Repeat, Route 6 is closed." My hands tightened on the wheel. The woman turned her head toward me. "You shouldn't be here," she said. Her voice sounded closer than it should have. I opened my mouth to respond, but she lifted her hand and pointed ahead. Through the snow, I saw flashing lights. Red, blue, weak. Something dark lay across the road. As we got closer, my heart dropped. A bus, or what was left of one. It had gone off the road and slammed into the embankment. The front end was crushed. Windows shattered. Snow packed inside through every opening. Emergency vehicles were parked crooked along the shoulder, their lights struggling against the storm. I pulled over and stopped. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. I turned to the passenger seat. It was empty. The blanket lay neatly folded. The door was still closed. "No!" I whispered. I jumped out of the truck and scanned the area. Snow burned in my face. No footprints. No sign anyone had stepped out. A police officer approached me. "You can't park here," he shouted. "Road's closed." "There was a woman," I said, voice shaking. "She was just in my truck." He froze. "What did she look like?" he asked quietly. I described her. His expression changed. Not confusion. Recognition. Inside the bus, chaos was frozen in time. Luggage scattered. Seats torn loose. Snow drifting inside like the bus was breathing its last breath. The officer stopped beside a tarp. "That bus went off the road 3 hours ago," he said. "Some people didn't make it." He lifted the edge just enough. It was her. Same coat, same hair, same eyes. "She froze before help arrived," he said. "I quit long-haul driving that winter. But sometimes, during heavy snow, my radio turns on by itself, and I still hear her voice saying, 'You really shouldn't be here.'" This is a story I don't tell often, not because people don't believe it, but because every time I say it out loud, it feels like I'm standing on that ice again, listening, waiting. I grew up in a small town in northern Minnesota, the kind of town where winter didn't feel temporary. Snow stayed for months. Lakes froze solid. Silence settled in early and refused to leave. There was a lake just outside town. Everyone knew it. Everyone feared it. Every winter. The warnings came back like clockwork. Stay off the ice. People die every year. The lake isn't safe. And every winter, someone ignored them. When I was 13, my best friend Devin thought the warnings were exaggerated. He was brave. Or reckless. Sometimes, it's hard to tell the difference when you're young. "The ice has been frozen for weeks," he told me one night. "It's thick. People used to drive trucks across it." That night, he dared me to walk across the lake with him. It was past midnight. Our parents thought we were asleep. We snuck out with flashlights tucked into our jackets, boots crunching softly through the snow. The lake looked unreal under the moonlight. Perfectly smooth. Endless. Like a giant sheet of glass dusted with white. Our footsteps echoed loudly as soon as we stepped onto the ice. The sound carried farther than it should have. Every step felt exposed, like the lake could hear us. I laughed nervously. Evan grinned. "See," he said. "Solid." Halfway across, the sound changed. Instead of a crunch, there was a crack. Sharp, loud. We froze. The lake went silent again, like it was holding its breath. "Probably just surface ice." Evan said, "We're fine." Then came another crack. Deeper, longer. I told him we should turn back. He nodded, but he took one more step. The ice gave way beneath him. The sound was violent. Sudden, a sharp snap, followed by a splash that echoed across the lake. Evan screamed. I ran toward him without thinking. The ice shattered under my weight. Freezing water rushed up my legs, stealing my breath instantly. I felt hands grab my jacket, Evan's hands, then slip away. His scream cut off. Just like that. Gone. I don't remember how I got back to shore. I remember crawling, screaming, my clothes freezing solid against my skin. They searched for him, for days, then weeks. They never found Evan's body. After that winter, the lake changed. Dogs refused to walk near it. Ice fishermen said they heard knocking from beneath the ice. People reported voices on foggy nights, always calling names, always from the center. Years passed. I grew up, moved away, tried to forget, but some places don't forget you. Decades later, I came back to town for a visit. The lake was frozen again. Smooth, perfect, just like that night. I told myself I was just looking. Then I heard it. My name. Soft. Familiar. It came from the middle of the lake. My heart started racing. Every instinct told me to run. But my feet moved forward. The ice looked solid. Safe. Help me, the voice whispered. It was Evan's voice. Exactly the way it used to sound. I stopped myself just in time. I turned and ran back to shore, lungs burning, fear pushing me faster than I'd ever moved before. The next morning, something waited on the ice. Fresh footprints. Mine, leading toward the center of the lake, and none leading back. I've learned something about winter storms. They don't just trap your body. They trap your choices. This happened during the coldest winter I can remember. I was 29 and working night security at a remote storage facility in northern Canada. It was the kind of job nobody wanted. Long hours, empty buildings, and isolation that crawled into your thoughts if you let it. The facility sat miles away from the nearest town. Just one long access road cutting through open land and frozen trees. No houses, no streetlights, nothing. That night, the weather report mentioned snow. Nothing serious, they said. By midnight, they were wrong. Snow started falling hard around 11 p.m. thick. Heavy flakes that swallowed the security lights and erased everything beyond the fence. The wind picked up, shaking the metal buildings and making them groan like they were alive. I radioed dispatch. Storm's getting bad. I said, might need to leave early. Static crackled. Then a voice answered. Finish your shift. Plows are on standby. That was lie number 1. By 2 a.m., the access road was gone. Just white. Endless. The wind howled so loud it sounded like voices layered on top of each other. That's when the power went out. The floodlights died instantly. The facility was swallowed by darkness, broken only by the weak beam of my flashlight. I was alone. No cameras. No lights. No way out. I decided to leave anyway. I grabbed my keys, stepped outside, and immediately regretted it. The cold slammed into me like a wall. Snow filled my mouth, my eyes, my ears. I could barely see my own truck parked less than 30 feet away. Still, I pushed forward. Halfway there, I heard footsteps. Not mine. They were slow, careful, crunching through snow behind me. I turned around, heart racing. Nothing, just wind and white emptiness. I reached my truck, hands shaking, and climbed inside. The engine struggled, coughing before finally turning over. Relief washed through me until I looked in the rear-view mirror. Someone was standing behind the truck. A man, barely visible through the snow. He didn't move, didn't wave, didn't knock. He just stood there, I rolled the window down an inch. "Hey!" I shouted. "You need help?" The man stepped closer. His face came into view, and my stomach dropped. His skin was pale. Too pale. His eyes were red and watery. His lips were blue. He wore no coat, just a thin uniform shirt. The same uniform I was wearing. "My truck won't start," he said calmly. "Can I get warm for a minute?" Every instinct screamed at me to drive, but I unlocked the door. The moment he climbed inside, the cab felt colder. He didn't shiver, didn't rub his hands together. He just sat there, staring straight ahead. "You shouldn't leave yet," he said. "I have to," I replied. "Road's dangerous." He turned slowly and looked at me. "You already tried." My breath caught. "What do you mean?" He didn't answer. The radio turned on by itself. Static filled the cab. Then a voice broke through. "Security, Unit 3, do you copy?" I grabbed the radio. "This is Unit 3. I'm leaving the facility." The dispatcher interrupted me. "No," she said quietly. "You're not." My heart slammed against my ribs. "What are you talking about?" There was a pause. Then she spoke again. "Your truck never made it past the gate." I turned to the man beside me. He was gone. The passenger door was still closed. The seatbelt untouched. No footprints outside. Nothing. I threw the truck into drive and slammed the accelerator. The truck didn't move. Snow had buried the tires completely. That's when I noticed the silence. The wind had stopped. The storm was gone. Outside, the facility lights flickered back on. Everything looked normal. Too normal. I stepped out of the truck. That's when I saw it. Another truck. Mine. Smashed against the gate at the edge of the property. The front end crushed. The windshield shattered inward. Emergency lights flashed silently around it. And beside it, a body, covered in snow, wearing my uniform. I don't remember collapsing, but I remember waking up in a hospital. They said I'd been found wandering the facility hours later, confused, suffering from severe hypothermia. They said my truck had slid off the road during the storm. They said I was lucky to be alive. But here's the part they never explain. Sometimes when winter storms hit, when the wind sounds just right, I hear footsteps behind me and a familiar voice asking, "Can I get warm for a minute?"